Welcome once again to Chill Filter, the podcast where we drink whiskey so you don't have to. But you probably should, and you probably are, and sometimes it's your job. But we're glad you're here. Really quick business this week. Hit us up on patreon.com/chillfiltered. Great way to support us. You can join in our drink-alongs, get some fun samples, get some times where you can drink along with us. In fact, we're recording later today a drink-along. So join in that way. It would be great. I think that's all the business for this week. We're here. We're at. I almost said. Well, you know, I'm going to say it now. We're at friggin' A. Smith Bowman Distillery, and we are really excited about that. We got. I'm going to introduce him in a moment. But we got David Bock here, and we're excited to drink the Cask Strength Batch 3 and the Abraham Bowman French Oak series. And we're excited for you guys to be here for that. So before I say anything else, David, how you liking Fredericksburg as compared to your prior place at New Orleans?
You know, it's a little bit slower pace of life down here.
Totally is.
Up here, I guess. It's really nice, though. I am enjoying it. I'm enjoying the community that's here. My kids can ride their bikes to school, so it's really nice and really sweet. And this opportunity to run and focus on A. Smith Bowman is just such a huge honor. And I'm really trying my best to, like you, hopefully we'll see and taste, put out some of the most premium products and great stuff that we can do.
Yeah.
So how long have you been here?
I've been here, I want to say 2 years. 2 years up here.
Nice.
I think that's right.
Yeah. And remind me, prior, what were you doing?
Okay, so do you want to go all the way back, or you just want to go
Sazerac House?
Sazerac House?
Yeah.
All right, so I had a neighbor across the street. She was the events coordinator at Sazerac House, and she's like, hey, we're building this thing called Sazerac House in New Orleans, and we need a distiller. Do you know how to make alcohol? And I go, yes, I do.
Nice.
Perfect. Are you just
a neighbor?
Just my neighbor across the street. And so I went in and I interviewed for it and got the position. And so at that point, the Sazerac House was still being built. And so they were like, oh, can you make sure that the tanks are going in the right spot? And if they have questions about how that stuff needs to be put aligned,
cool.
Can you manage that? And I was like, yeah. And then hired that team, trained them on how to make rye whiskey, and then started pushing that out. And so I was down at the Sazerac House, I want to say 5 years.
Okay.
And then after that, the master distiller here at A. Smith Bowman, Bryan, he got a promotion to oversee multiple facilities, and they brought me up from New Orleans to focus solely on A. Smith Bowman.
That's so cool. Yeah. So wait, what? I guess I should know. I feel like I should know. What is Sazerac House? Like, what was that about?
So Sazerac House is so we are part of a larger organization called Sazerac, which is a privately held company that's based in New Orleans. And for the Sazerac House was created to be a complimentary experience in New Orleans where people could come in and see some of the brands that are in the portfolio, as well as mainly focused on the cocktail and the cocktail history, because Sazerac or New Orleans is known for their cocktails. So part of the classic Sazerac cocktail is rye whiskey, Sazerac rye whiskey. And so we created a distillery there so that when you're going through and you're learning about all these cocktails, you could also stop into the distillery, talk to my team or the team that I had down there about making alcohol, and like talk to real distillers and smell the fermentations, see the distillate coming off the still, all those pieces, and like instead of it just being like a touchscreen or a show, it's like you're really talking to someone that knows what they're doing and how they're doing every day. So
that's pretty cool.
That was kind of a neat experience,
So did that distillate, did that get into any specific Sazerac related bottlings?
So like I said, that was 5 years ago. We had some stuff happen at the beginning, so those barrels should be coming of age pretty soon.
That's pretty cool.
Those will be Sazerac rye barrels made at the Sazerac House.
That's cool.
So that'll be really neat when those come out. Hopefully they'll invite me down to see how those turned out.
You think they'll age a little longer and make some handy out of that?
That would be really neat. That would be quite an honor to see that go through. But since it is, as you know, when you move when you try to make a recipe at a different location, it's always going to taste a little bit different.
Totally.
We did our best to try to make it in line with everyone, so it'll be interesting to see how they turn out.
Yeah, and interesting to see if it would be a separate release entirely, or if it would try to be merged with the main Sazerac line.
We got a lot of questions about that, and my answer every time, which I want to give now, is we'll see.
Yeah, that's
we
cool.
We got some time to wait, and we got some time to see.
But
so
you were laying the brickwork, though.
I was creating it and showing that team on how to do it and what to try to aim for.
Yeah,
now time.
Since you were making it, I'm thinking 6th BTAC.
It's time. It's finally we get a double George Very Stag.
There you go.
How that goes, yeah.
That's cool. So what I love about Ace with Bowman, and this kind of promotion for you to come up here, is Ace with Bowman makes solid whiskey, solid bourbon, but also is very experimental. And I think, like, if I were to guess, and you don't have to answer this, but I think like one of Bryan's things of how he did so well in his career is he experimented a ton.
That's 100% right. Bryan did experiment a ton, and he left me a great legacy of barrels and experiments
That's
that
cool.
went through, right? So this French oak right here, this is not Bryan's, but it's Truman Cox's juice.
No way.
It's his experiment, right? So he put it in, and this is, when you talk about distilling, you always talk about, you're making juice for the next generation.
Yeah.
That's exactly right what's happening. So a lot of what Bryan laid down, I'm going to get the honor of releasing as these
That's cool.
Abrahams, and then I'm continuing in his tradition, let's say, of continuing to experiment and continuing to try new things and see what I can do to tweak on lessons I've learned from what he's done and more experimentation. So we have a lot of stuff in the warehouse, aging, trying stuff out and seeing what's going to happen.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Some of it doesn't work out, but a lot of it does.
But you get to be like, I assume maybe it'll be here in 15 years. But maybe if you move on to something else in Sazerac or whatever, you're starting experiments, I'm sure, for people in the future too.
That's exactly right, and that's the other part. So the stuff I'm laying down, like right now, I'm laying stuff down. We can go take a look at it. Some experimental runs, and I hope to be here for when those mature out.
That's cool.
But that might not. It might be the guy that's next in line. So it's always kind of interesting, and you're always trying to make, again, the best product and the best thing.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to assume you can't talk about those experiments, but
I was about to. You saw that? I had to catch myself.
That's funny.
In general, what are your favorite types of experiments? What experiments excite you? What would you be interested in doing?
Is it always wood, or is it like
wood's nice? Wood is nice. It's an easier one than if you were to change like a mash bill.
Yeah.
And you kind of have a better idea. Like when you start changing around yeast, that's really when it gets interesting.
That's cool.
So you could change yeast around, grain bills change around. I like experimenting with grain bills as well.
Nice.
And then I'm starting to put my toe in for different types of yeast and different kind of things like
That's
that.
cool.
That's cool.
But I do. Not that barrels aren't exciting and wood is not exciting, because so much flavor does come from those, right? So I'm always constantly looking for new things, looking to try to work with new styles of barrels and new finishes and just find those things. But it's also really neat to start with the straight distillate and see if I can improve on the distillate or change the distillate to make something even more interesting.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Especially the yeast part gets me like super interested, because we all know that, like, you look at like Four Roses and they got like 5 yeast strains, and they're all different. Yeah,
that's right. There's so much. There's so many things that you can do to change, and that one little change is going to affect it so incredible.
That's
you
so
talk
cool.
about like, in 15 years, I have no idea if the yeast I'm picking today is going to look good in 15 years,
Right.
or not, right? And so it's neat.
Yeah, you were talking about when you were in New Orleans and you were working there, that liquid that you're aging down there, that's aging in New Orleans, right? It's in barrels in New Orleans.
So
that's a great question.
That's a great question. Well, think about how to answer that. There is no. Okay.
That's okay.
So we're gonna say this. So because of its, the Sazerac house is in the French Quarter, like across the street from literally the French Quarter. It's in the Central Business District, but it's in the French Quarter.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so the fire department didn't want us storing lots of volume of barrels in that place. And and because the New Orleans is so old and so compact, you don't have room for that. So what we did was we decided to send them actually to Buffalo Trace's Rick House.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So what I'll do, or what they're doing is we'll fill barrels. When we have a truckload, we'll fill the truckload and then send them up to Buffalo Trace. They'll store them. They'll let them age there. Again, we're continuing to try to make it taste like Sazerac rye, so we want the same type of aging environment that's happening.
Right.
And then, boom, we'll figure out if we're going to bring them back down to New Orleans or what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But they all are stamped Sazerac House, Sazerac
That's
Rye
cool.
Whiskey, all
Very
that
cool.
kind of
Very
stuff.
cool. That was leading into a bigger question where I wanted your personal take on
the French wine blade of the mid 1850s or whatever. He knows. I can assure you he knows. But go on.
You're gonna have to educate me. And
Yeah.
listeners
I will
some
later.
other time. But your personal experience with maybe aging liquid in different environments. Like you've moved, you're here now in Virginia. What would the aging process be like? What would the rick house differences be like? What could you expect in terms of difference in geographical locations?
It's so scary.
Oh, I believe it.
So when we, because we're expanding here and we're breaking into new warehouses, and so currently when I came in, we had 3 warehouses full of barrels, and now I have 5 warehouses, right? So we're growing, we're making more, we're trying to get more John Jay on the shelves. And every time we go into a different warehouse, you have to expect that there's going to be a different aging environment. We don't use traditional rick houses here. Our rick houses and our barrel warehouses are
cool.
are brick, right?
Oh,
and so some of them are below grade, so we don't have a lot of fluctuation in temperature as it goes through, like you would see in a typical rick house, and a lot of airflow. So it does give us a different barrel profile. Like our cask strength, which we're going to try, we have no problem getting barrels off that are extremely high proof into the 140s, right? Because I believe that, that aging environment. We're also right here on the Piedmont fault line of this in Virginia, and so that also plays with it, right? With the fresh air coming in from the Potomac and the coast, knocking against the mountains. So it's all part of it. And that was another thing to think about when we were, at least in New Orleans, was, that aging environment would be extremely different than Kentucky.
Totally.
The humidity, the heat that comes on, there is no real winter there. If there is, it's like a week, right? So to try to narrow down the volume of variables, it's best to try to keep as much as you can to try to be the same, to try to get the same product. Because I don't want you to show up and grab a bottle and not have a decent understanding of what it's going to taste like, right? You don't want it to be so far off and be like, oh, this John Jay is completely different than something else.
Right.
So barrel warehouses, where you age them, does have a large impact on the flavor of that barrel throughout its life.
That's cool.
Totally.
Yeah. I had a question. Oh, no. It was about the great French wine blade of the mid-1800s, which I am sure you know about.
Later, Cole.
Can you remind me? I don't know what we're
Okay,
talking
so
here.
this is why Sazerac became a rye cocktail.
Oh, because the grapes
Yep.
that's
Yeah,
right.
there was like some insect that took over French brandy,
I'm
basically.
going to tell you stuff, but I'm not gonna.
No. He knows, everyone. No, I just want to joke about that for the most part.
That's exactly right, though. That's why they moved from brandy over to rye whiskey in the Sazerac cocktail.
Yep.
Yeah,
Interesting.
100%.
So let's talk about this Abraham Bowman. Coming in here, I actually won on the lottery.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so
And I
I
didn't even know I was
he
going
should
to
have
be
applied,
here.
yeah.
I didn't even enter because I didn't think I was ever going to be here, and then now here I am. And you can still get them, right? People are still coming in.
Yeah, we
No.
Oh yeah.
Wait. You can
Not, but, like,
get them.
yeah,
like, pick
it up.
If you're
Yeah.
a part of the lottery,
lottery
and you won
winner.
correct.
Yeah.
So tomorrow is the last day for pickups.
Oh, that's funny.
So I
Yeah,
could've-
we're
should have waited.
just in the window for it.
Uh-huh.
And then you're right. So I did lottery them out. So we used to allow people to line up prior to coming in. I didn't find that the fairest way possible.
Yeah.
Because if you had a job then it might not let you be able to show up the night before and spend the night in the parking lot.
Absolutely.
And then also I found that I thought that it might have a better opportunity to get into people that actually love it and enjoy it and will enjoy it versus people that are out there to
flip it or something.
Do something that's not out there for the money aspect of it, which you absolutely should never resell.
Totally.
And so that's the fairest way. That's how I plan to continue to release these until, if y'all have a better idea on how
works for me.
Besides just putting your name in it every time. But besides that, that's how I'm gonna try to do it, and at least for the Abrahams and Cask Strength.
No, that's cool. Great. That's cool. How many bottles was this? It was like 2,000, right?
It was a good amount.
Yeah.
What does that number say? It was more than that number.
Bottle number 2.
Right,
so there were more than 2.
It was more than 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. I got the other one, I guess. Yeah.
I think bottle number 1's down there in the cabinet, right?
Oh, I believe it.
That one.
Yeah.
And then,
cool.
So to be honest, we took this out of our stash, and so that's why they're all low numbers on them.
Ooh, tell us why you have a stash.
So what we do every time we release some is we hold some back. And we hold some back because we want to give them out for donations to raise money.
That's awesome.
So if there is an incident that happens anywhere in the United States and we we'll try to donate some of these super rare bottles so people can auction them so we can help raise money. So that's the main reason that we have some back stock of these. It's not because I don't want y'all to have them and have everyone enjoy them.
And it's not that big, listeners.
Yeah.
No,
it's not that big a stash. Yeah.
No.
Cabinet, not closet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it is kind of like our little retain, and it's not to help further the good nature.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
And David was telling me there's a cider finish one that never got released to the public that is only for like fundraisers and donations and that kind of stuff.
That's right. So we did. So if you really paying attention, we released number 21, and then we skipped 22 because this is release number 23. And so that 22 was a cider cask finish. It was only one barrel, and it was very small. And if we had tried to lottery that out, we would have had a lot of very angry people based on the bottles that we have in there. So we thought the best way to do it was we let the employees have a bottle, and then we are holding that. And so that's one of the most rare Abrahams. So if you do see that come up in an auction site, that is us putting it out there to try to help donate that.
That's so cool.
And by auction, I mean helping not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I have a question. What was it? Release 21, was that 2020?
Yes.
And then release 22, never public, was in 2021, and then 3 years without. Or 3 years until the next one.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah. I was keeping an eye on it. I mean, since Sweet 16 and sequential fill, and I was like, I was on top of those things.
Are you saying I'm not doing my job?
Yeah, I thought it might have been the transition, but I was like, maybe we'll have to make up for this. Yeah.
It absolutely was a transition.
Oh, cool,
right?
yeah.
So it was really me getting my feet underneath me here, trying to get everything figured out and how it works.
I respect that. Because you don't want to put out something for this line.
I didn't want to try to put something subpar out. And so I was going through, I was tasting those barrels. Bryan and I had an idea of what we wanted and what was going to come down the line. And really, it was because I was just so new on how to do a special release like this. It just took me longer than it should have to get it out.
No, it's all good.
Now that it's out, and now that I understand the entire process, because there's a lot of work that goes into getting that bottle to getting that juice in that bottle behind the scenes, when you have to think about all the federal license that has to go along with it, and the state codes and everything that has to go through. I was just so unaware that I started the process too late, and then it was pushed and boom, 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 and then bam. Now we're in 2024, and I missed a year and a half of something, 2 years of release. And so I don't want you to think that's going to happen again. I understand the process. And I've got it down. And I've got, what's happening next, what's coming up. So, yeah.
And we've also had some good A. Smith Bowman Cask Strength releases, too, in the meantime.
That's right. I got that Cask 2 out. I was very happy with that one. Again, that's what I was talking about. That was super high proof. That was another one of those hazmat proof ones that came across because the barrels were just be able to produce that. That was a 10-year-old. And so then when I went into Cask Strength number 3, I pulled my 10s and I started tasting them, and I was getting a lot of spice, and I was getting a lot of spice from that, and I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm gonna try to mellow that out so it kind of gives a difference in number 2. And, but to do that, I need to bring in some 9-year.
Yep.
So I had to put 9-year on there. That's why it says 9, because I had to bring in some 9-year barrels to help smooth it out and make it not as peppery, not as strong, and then again drop the proof a little bit. So
Was it hazmat prior to that?
I can't remember the exact proof of just those 10 years blended together, but I know when I found these 9-year-old barrels, I was really happy with what they brought to the entire blend overall. And so again, I am continuing to chase the flavor profile, and so I'm not going to chase a proof. I'm going to chase to try to make the best possible bourbon, best possible whiskey, best possible product, and put that in the bottle for these really unique blends. Because I do want you to sit around and get a chance to get them and buy them and enjoy them with your friends. And they are so unique and they are kind of hard. And I want it to be a really great product.
That's great.
Yeah.
So Abraham Bowman French Oak is not a bourbon.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, so this is an experiment.
Yeah.
The experiment was what happens if you age whiskey in different types of barrels. So let's get some French oak barrels that have char. Let's get some French oak barrels that do not have char.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so because those barrels did not have char, I can't call it a bourbon.
Yep. So that's the only thing. Was it the standard A. Smith Bowman juice? Yeah.
Going in, yes.
Yeah.
So the
That's cool.
juice was same for that, and the other wood experiments that went along with it. Like we call this oak series, because I have more barrels.
Cool.
Of the same juice that are just different woods. And so, and again, char, no char. We'll see if the next one can be a bourbon or not be a bourbon or what happens. And so that's why I had to not call it a bourbon and it had to be a whiskey.
And the uncharred French Oak, was that new fill?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So it spent its entire life in French oak.
That's cool.
This is not a finish in French oak. This is Truman Cox put this in his experiment. We still have the barrels if you want to see.
Nice.
Do I still have those barrels? Maybe not.
That's all good.
We still have so he put those in, and we can show you where they were sitting and where they were resting.
That's cool.
Stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for what's in the future too with the Oak series or
And you can really thank Bryan, right? So he was the one that put the work in to try these different things because, like you said, I've only been here 2 years, and I can tell you it is extremely challenging to not only do our full lineup of bourbon and we're not just doing bourbon here. We're also doing vodka. We're doing the gins.
Rum.
We're doing rum. And so it's very challenging to continue to hit our growth volume numbers and do experiments.
Yeah.
But, because
Totally.
I only have so many man hours that people I had this notion that all I would do is be like, hey, Neil is one of my processors.
Yeah.
Neil, I want you to make this grain bill and I want you to put it in the still and mash it and do it and then call me and I'll taste the juice when it's done and this is what I want you to do. That's not how we. Neil is too busy making John Jay's, processing John Jay's, making Bowman Brothers. Right. So it's literally I'm in the back of the still house, mashing, cooking, doing these fermentations, pitching yeast. I had to. So it's really it's a hard effort. But it's like a passion of love. I enjoy it. Totally. It's a lot more fun than sitting answering emails, which is a lot of the process of being a distiller is answering emails, worrying about finance. And so it's so fun to get back there and be able to cook. But it's just a tough one, and it really is out of love and passion.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm curious about process. Here pretty soon we'll get into this. We normally, have like an entry buzz, something to get us started a little bit. And we may or may not do that. We'll figure that out. But you personally, when you go in to taste something, when you're pulling your 10 years and you're trying to figure out what's going on and you're getting a little bit of spice, as you lead up to that, what do you do? Do you have a ritual? Do you rinse glasses a certain way? Do you drink something to set you right at first? Is there a process for you in all this?
Is there a process for finding? I don't. There's not a ritual. You're right. I don't have I'm not going to drink coffee this morning.
Exactly.
I'm not going to do that piece because I typically try not to start tasting at like 8 a.m. in the morning. Yeah. We start at 7 a.m. here, and so if you start tasting barrels at 8, it's not always the best experience. Right. It happens, and you make sure the blends are right before they go to the bottling line. But I I typically do them in the afternoons, and then you got to wait a little bit of time after lunch. So we do take that into account, especially when we're doing these more unique blends. Rinsing glasses, that's a little bit more challenging because you're in the warehouse.
Yeah.
So sometimes when we want to do, when I want to check up on all the experiments, I'll provide a list, and I'll be like, hey, go find these barrels, bring me samples. And then we'll line at the table, and myself and my production supervisor will taste them, and we'll be like, oh, this is good, that's good, blah, blah, blah. But other times, I'm like, hey, can you tell me where these barrels are lying? I'm going to go grab the thief. I'm going to go grab the bung puller, and I'm going to take a Glencairn, and we're going to go find them.
Yeah.
And then we're tasting them. So we're just in the warehouse, dropping barrels, open them up, see if they're right, if not, and then kind of making annotations on what's happening there.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of all over the place on what that day brings and how much time I got to go for it.
Cool.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So one more question before I hope we can drink the Abraham Bowman first. I've had some. We were talking even before we started recording about Sweet 16, and I've had some other amazing ones. But Sweet 16 is probably one of the top 10 bourbons I probably ever had.
Yeah, it gets a lot of great reviews. And a lot of people love it. Yeah.
Abraham Bowman was a big release, and you're working your way up, and you're putting out these things that you didn't even start. On a scale of 1 to 10, how proud of it are you for Abraham Bowman's this French Oak release?
I mean, that's like asking us, is it my favorite child?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
had to be asked.
I love all children. I love my
yeah,
children.
Exactly.
I love this whole family right
Yeah.
here. But we are trying to make it very unique, and very special. I do think that these barrels worked out really well.
That's cool.
And I did have to, like I said, I did have to blend them together with char and uncharred.
Yeah.
And again, I did that purposefully. I'm never going to do it to get more volume.
Yeah.
I'm never going to do it for that reason. I'm doing it specifically for taste.
Yeah.
Same thing with proof. I got this question 2 minutes ago when someone was picking up their Abraham. They're like, why did you release it at 100? And I was like, because we tried it at different proofs, and we're like, at 100 is where it's the best.
Nice.
And that's the same thing with the barrels, right? You're trying to find when it hits its peak, and it's really its maturity, and it's at the best possible time to dump it and to start using it. And that's the exact same thing that we did with that Abraham. Is we tried to find the best. I tried to find the best blends of those barrels, and then at what proof to do to make it what I was trying to aim for.
Perfect.
I can very much appreciate that stuff. One of the things we do on our typical episodes is we try it with water, and sometimes it's better. Especially some of the cask strength stuff is surprisingly great.
That's the whole reason we had the cask strength, because I know people love that high proof, but it's, again, if you don't want to drink it at 135, you can add water and cut it, or you can put it on ice and just let it sit there and mellow out. And
I remember it was good with both. Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Nice.
And so you don't have to try it. Like if you want to see what it's like, go running through that still house and open those barrels, drink it straight neat, or try it at neat.
Yeah.
And then you can only do so many barrels at that before your palate just gets blown out. And
that makes sense.
I gotta go do something else. I'll come back to this later. So that's another aspect of it. When you're talking about routine, you can only do so many,
Exactly.
and then your palate's blown. And I'm sure y'all do that all the time, right? You're like, I'm not gonna be able to taste 30 different bottles today.
We did a 9
for our
lineup
300th episode.
For our 300th episode, 9 cask strength whiskeys, and then we did one little mini episode afterwards, and I'm like, I have no chance of knowing what this next one is.
It blows your palate, right? Doing that high proof stuff.
Yeah.
And it's the exact same thing. You can only do so many barrels. You can only do that. And then you have to break, and you have to come back and be like, all right, was that right? And so with these barrels, it's the same thing. And you're going back, and you're like, all right, I shouldn't go in that order. I should go over here and try these. And
Exactly. And I do that too. When I go through blinds, I'll go A through D, but then after I take a sec and water and whatever, then I'll go D through A. I like to, sometimes I'll go A and then B, but then back to A to reset and then to C. I like to hop around a lot.
That's exactly right.
I totally get that.
And we talked about water, and so the glasses we're going to use today, these are actually our lab glasses, right? And
that's
so
so
they're
cool.
marked on them. There's individual markings, and that's because we do cut. You do need to cut it just so that you know what the proof is going to be like and how it changes. So those are just kind of quick cuts that you can do.
Oh, that's cool.
Throughout the glass, which is kind of neat.
So let's do it. let's drink Abraham first.
Abraham. All right, so we're not gonna open that one because
No,
there's two, and we might want to.
It's for the appearance.
That's right. So it looks nice. But I do have this one right here. Grab
Which is
a glass.
number 8.
Which is number 8. Yes. Again, we're still very narrow down there. And then, so again, French oak. So what I found was that because it is French oak, as you know, it becomes a lot of cherry notes on the nose. That's also what I found here.
I usually get a lot of floral off of French oak.
Floral. So A. Smith Bowman, because we do triple distill our juice, we floral is a very common note that we get with this distillate.
I'm getting Chardonnay off the front.
Is that right?
Chardonnay. French oak is a little like creamy for me usually. I guess in terms of mouthfeel rather than a particular note. But I usually kind of with like a maker's product, I'll get
like
a lot
there.
of creaminess. Yeah.
Am I the only one thinking Chardonnay?
I can see Chardonnay. It's so hard because you don't want to lead, but you want to give suggestions like this is what I'm finding. You know, oh yeah, I do taste butter pecans.
Yeah, keep your mindset to your own opinions. But I'm in the candy cherry territory.
Getting a little grapey, a little bit. but sometimes with French oak, even though this is first use French oak, it's not like you use like Armagnac or Cognac barrels and charred some of them.
No. Each bottle gets like a whole rundown, right? So it's like, hey, here's the distillate. Here's the wood that went in. Here's the cooperage. As much information that I have about those barrels, I tried to provide because not only is it for the novice coming in that was able to get a bottle, but it's also like for the experts or the subject matter experts that come in and want to know all those kind of individual details. Yeah. And so we try to provide as much as we can about that.
Did you see how
too many secrets?
He gestured at us when he said experts? Did you see?
He said, and he also subject matter experts. Yeah.
Subject matter
Sneeze. Do you use Independent Stave Company?
We have Independent Stave Company barrels in here. The majority of our barrels are coming right now from Cumberland Cooperage.
Okay.
Which used to be Robertson Stave.
Okay.
East Burnstadt Cooperage. I think those are all the same.
Okay.
Same name.
That's cool.
So all in all, this nose is delightful, and I could see how more proof here would have been maybe a little too intense. It stays really light, a little bit of florality. I get a lot of candy cherry off the nose from this, and it's just very bright and vibrant on the nose for me immediately. What do you think about the nose? What are your kind of favorite notes on the nose for this?
Again, I just love how these French barrels turn out, right? It's just so unique versus what our typical one is. You're right, I can see those cherries. I always try to come in with like what my tasting notes were originally, and then I start listening to you, and I'm like, oh, that's right. Oh, I can see that.
We do that all the time.
It's so hard for me to be like, oh, what was I going to say about that? So I always say cherry. You're right. I always say cherry because that was the main component that I smelled when I was first blending these barrels together.
Yeah.
So I took a sip, two sips. Beautifully apple-y. Nice caramel. Very. I don't mean this in a bad way. As opposed to sharply sweet, dull sweet, like a wheat sweet, as opposed to like a high rye sweet or something like that. Nice. Really nice. I'll think more.
Think more. Yeah, it's tough.
Transitions quickly for me on the palate. I like to. I'm more of a experience guy rather than a specific tasting note guy in general. I like to kind of just try to outline what the experience is, and that sip timeline from 1 to 10, right there at the landing 1, 2, 3. Lot of bright fruit, apple, and probably cherries just carry over from the nose. But it's really bright and fruity right away. But right around like 4 or 5, kind of mid sip, is where it completely transitions for me away from fruity into the creamy kind of vanilla territory, and then it stays kind of creamy throughout the rest. And the proof point does wonders for me. I do think that the 100 proof here, it's very full-bodied. There's still a lot going on, even though there's not a lot of intensity to try to punch you in the face right away or anything.
And I tried to make it last longer, right? So I thought it was a little short on the finish, and so I tried to do that by bringing in different, it's just hard. I can do what the barrels produce, totally. And so it's very challenging to try to manipulate it towards other pieces, but
there is an idea in my mind that's thinking. Are you able to tell us maybe the distribution or the percentages of charred to uncharred in this ish?
That's a great question. I'm trying to remember. Let me do some math real
No,
quick.
I don't. No, I don't.
One
think
barrel,
I will.
two
I
barrels.
don't
No.
think I will.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it was 40%.
Okay.
No, it was probably 30% uncharred.
Mm-hmm. Did the uncharred turn out pretty light in color?
No, surprisingly,
Really?
I was really shocked by that. I was expecting it to have lack of color, and it really wasn't.
That's funny.
Which was really neat. I did like the color of this, like that kind of copper, like copper penny thing.
Terracotta.
But I was expecting it to be not as pronounced as the char. And I don't know if that was just the 12 years of the.
I guess so. Yeah.
The timeline that affected it, but yeah.
Yeah. Charred versus uncharred. Were there? I am sure there are many variables to each in terms of ways that they affect the profile. But if you were to kind of boil it down to just one specific thing for each, what would you say if you were tasting the blend? Like this needs more charred, or this needs more uncharred. What are you going to get from each of those barrels to affect the blend in the way you wanted it to?
So I had the barrels side by side, and what I did was I took, I had a little pipette, and I was like, let's just pull 20% out here, put it in the charred. What is it doing now? What is that? What am I thinking about? All right, let's do a little bit more. Okay, too far. I don't really like where that's going. Let's start again. So I know that I wanted to base it with that barrel that was charred, and then try to augment with the uncharred to try to help, because at 12 years for us, it gets very spicy. And so I really wanted to try to mellow and try to get that, like I said, that finish to last longer. And so I was, and when I tried just uncharred, it was good, but there was something missing from it. And I was like, all right, so we need to combine the two to make that best blend that we can.
So was it the spice that the charred barrels bring more spice?
Oh, absolutely.
And
they
definitely
did.
The
At least
uncharred
on this
barrels bring more rich, creamy kind
like
of
vanilla.
Vanilla.
It was a good piece that was coming across from those uncharred, and then it really is just trying to blend it together to try to get the best we could.
Even
That's
everything
great.
out. Yeah.
I think it's great. If you win the lottery, you should pick one up.
By tomorrow. This isn't even going to air by the time. If you didn't pick up your bottle, I'm sorry if you're watching this.
This does go into distribution, right?
No, so Abraham, because there are so few barrels and bottles, we really just save that for sale Virginia and through our home place.
That's cool.
Now we will. I do restaurant sales.
Okay.
So we try, so what I want is when you come to Fredericksburg, Virginia, to come see us, because we do complimentary tours and tastings every day of the week.
Every day.
10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturday and Sunday 12 to 5.
Beautiful Fredericksburg, Virginia.
I want you to be able to be like, oh, I didn't get the lottery. I didn't get the Abraham. Be like, oh, well, you know what? There's this restaurant downtown that carries us, and they have the Abraham and they have the Cask Strength.
Nice.
And so I try to make sure that we blanket downtown Fredericksburg and Virginia as best I can in Abraham's and in Cask Strengths. So when you're around us, you're able to find them and try them, even if you can't do it sitting and doing a podcast and doing this. But you can go to a bar or restaurant, hopefully see it there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I went to one last night with my wife. We were on a date night, and I was like, "Oh yeah, we're right there."
Oh, was it Abraham too?
It was. They had both because
That's cool.
Was it on the top shelf?
It was not on the top shelf, but it was right there.
Change their contract right now.
But I knew.
Very eye line right there.
She knew me when I came in, and I was like, "That's right." I remember. She's like, "Yeah, I showed up yesterday and grabbed it." I go, "Yeah, that's great."
Nice.
She's like, quick, he's walking down the sidewalk, put all the Abraham Bowman.
That's great. I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I think
enjoyed it.
it's a great experience.
And it's a 12-year too, and that shows.
Yeah.
The age shows on this in a good way. It's not over oaked. It's beautifully complex too.
That's what I was worried about, was that over oaking, right? And so, like I said, I did take that gap in time, and I knew that this French oak was going to be like, ready.
Yeah.
And I was trying to be like, I got to get this moving fast because I don't want it to go too far past.
Yeah.
And so we got to keep going. We got to go.
Yeah,
That's great.
That's exciting.
So let's prep a little bit. Let's talk about A. Smith Bowman Cask Strength.
Okay.
So you said you were kind of the guy on the end of batch 2.
Correct.
And then batch 3, you didn't start for sure because it's a 9-year at minimum, right? Yeah. So You haven't been here 9 years.
But you started the blending process.
Yeah.
The blending was me, but it wasn't. This is all Brian's juice.
Yeah.
Let me think about that. Yes. So this is all Brian's juice. Brian put these all in back in the day, and then I tried to do 10 years, but I didn't. I needed some extra to it to get to the profile that I wanted to hit, and so I was like, all right, let me go through the warehouse, find some 9s, see if that will do it. And again, just like I said, in the lab, trying these blends out and being like, this really does make a good product.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna try to keep it at 10. This was kind of if I can, I'm gonna try to keep the next one and the further ones to be 10.
Yeah.
But like I said, you can only do what those barrels provide. And so if the 10s weren't the best possible juice, and I thought it could be helped by adding younger, I'll do it. I'm not going to be stuck to chasing a proof or chasing an age statement. I'm going to put out the best product possible.
Yeah.
Do you max like a 125 barrel entry proof on these?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's our standard entry proof. Now we have played around with that again, like when we're doing experiments, because the variables you can change.
Yeah.
Sometimes different recipes work better at lower proof from what we found.
Yeah.
So we'll change that up. But standard bourbon recipe 125
That's
is
cool.
where we're doing our entry proof at.
Yeah.
Are batches generally 1 year apart, or how do the batches work here? When do you come out with new batches?
Cask Strength I'm trying to do annually.
That's cool.
So
Around the same time every year?
Around the same time. So hopefully this fall, because I think this one came out in January. I was a little late on that one.
Sounds about right.
And so hopefully this fall I'll try to get out a little bit before the end of the year.
Okay.
I have, I got more experimental stuff that I've got in the works. I'm just waiting for, numbers to come through. And then again, what month is this? This is April.
Late
so
April?
that means that in 2 months I'll start looking at those barrels that I have for
That's
Cask Strength
cool.
and start being like, okay, are these ready? Do I want to use these or do I need to keep looking through? And what else does my inventory look like?
I love that.
How long does that blending process typically take?
Well, I only done it twice.
Yeah.
Right. So I get my barrels. And we run through the barrels, and I go, yes, 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 no, yes, yes, no, no. And so we try all the barrels, and then we do the blend, and then I think.
Right.
And then I think, and I'm like, how can we do this? What am I hitting? What am I tasting here? What's going to happen? So sometimes, like with 2, I was really, 2 didn't take that long. 3, I wanted to, again, I had a little bit more experience knowing what it was like. And so 3 took me a little bit longer to think about and how to try to hit the profile I was looking for.
Yeah, that's cool. No, you gotta love it.
So you said here in about 2 months is when you'd kind of start
Looking around,
Maybe takes about 2 months to try and think, and then production kind of ramps up at a certain point. I'm just curious about overall timeline.
So I put together a list of barrels that I think will work.
Yeah.
And then I give it to my team and I say, go find them. And that takes a while. So he has to run through the rick house or the warehouses and like pull them down. So we store our barrels on pallets here. We don't do a traditional rick house.
Okay.
And because they're so old, they're typically against the wall, which means he has to pull this whole line down, grab that barrel, put the whole line back, record all that movement so we don't lose anything or move anything, and then bring me the sample. And I'm like, no, put it back. Let's put that to the side.
Yeah.
So that takes a month right there for him just to pull all the barrels that I want to have sampled out. And then it goes into this table where we're sitting right here. We put in all the samples here, start playing around, make sure everything tastes right. And then we typically don't start the full blend because I don't want that proof to drop while it's sitting in a tank or anything like that. So I need to make sure all my federal government paperwork's ready, all my state codes are ready, all my bottling. I have plenty of bottles, I have plenty of labels, I have plenty of T-corks. I have time on my production schedule, and then I'm like, okay, we got all our ducks in a row. Boom, let's drop it. And so by the time we blend it and let it and put it all to a tank, I only let it sit for, I want to say 2 days, 3 days before I send it to the bottling line because I don't want that proof to evaporate out because it's so high proof, right?
Yeah,
so we're really just letting it sit in the tank for 1-2 days and then boom, send it down to the bottling line and let's go.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah, that's exciting.
And then we'll just sit on it if we have to and wait for the lottery to open or wait for anything to happen or distribution.
Yeah.
So Cask Strength we do distribute, right?
Yep.
So number 2, there's still some number 2 cases available for distribution, and then 3, is still available for distribution nationwide. I think all we're doing is figuring out the allocation on where it's going to be. So you still might be, if you don't live in Virginia, you there's a chance in select markets that number 3 will be in your market.
Yeah.
Now, which ones those are, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's brand management, and they'll figure that part out.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
I heard it's all going to Phoenix, Arizona. So.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Do you really want that many people in Phoenix searching for it?
That's true. Like, we'll bleep that out later. So I'm sure you got a little flack for being sub hazmat for batch 3, but who cares?
Really?
Who cares about them?
Oh, just
Not
people
much?
online, like.
Yeah, I mean, what do they know?
It's hard, you know.
Who cares?
When you're doing something like creatively like this, you talk about how you try not to like read reviews or read one of those ones that read reviews on how you're doing and how you're not doing.
Right.
And so, it's all, I take it with a grain of salt. I'm like, I understand. But you know, I'm my hardest critic on myself.
Yeah.
Right? So you're like, hey, what ranking did you give this, Abraham? What ranking did you give that cask strength? I don't really want to say.
Yeah.
But I will say that I'm always trying to do better.
Yeah.
Right? I'm always trying to do better. I tried to do really good on 2, and I tried to do better on 3, and I'm going to continue to try to do better every time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Cool.
Well, let's sip it.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Here,
We're not going to open that bottle, but I have this one right here, and these aren't numbered.
What do we got here? What do we got?
That we don't number the
Oh,
cask
okay,
strength.
okay.
Yeah. Did you? Yeah, we got one.
We got plenty of glasses,
sweet.
I think. I hope.
Yeah, I've had number 1 and number 2, and number 2 was, as I remember, just as good as number 1. So congrats on that.
Bryan did a wonderful job with number 1. It was so intimidating to come after that number 1 because it was so great. And then in that number, not that I was paralyzed with like fear of being as good, but I put that number 2 out and I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
And this one, number 3, I'm very, very happy with how this came out.
Smells great.
Again, it's 135.1 proof, 9 years old, because the majority of it is 10 years old, but I did have to bring that 9 in for that palate. And 67.5 proof.
Beautifully appley.
The 9-year contribution, not like it matters, but just out of curiosity, do you think the 9-year contributed 10% of the overall blend, or like 2%?
I would love to tell you like we did with the French Oak, but I can't remember how much
Cool.
how much 9-year I put in there. I know it needed it, and so I did do it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like it was less than 20%.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you're doing it, and what I wanted from that 9-year, I didn't need a large volume. So it's not like half of it is 9. No, there's a very small. Yeah. But because I put 1 barrel of 9, exactly. 1 drop, I had to say 9.
Exactly. Yeah. My cherry on the general profile here of the line, the cherry note has turned
sweet
syrupy,
baking apples,
syrupy cherry.
Yeah, I'm getting the similar to like Stag, really good like apples, cherries, pie, like very sweet, sharply sweet.
Baking spice for sure, bringing in that pie.
I love it. Great nose.
Yeah, and the color, it's a little darker. It's beautiful.
Ooh, great palate. I mean, it's hot, but it's not. It doesn't. It reads like.
It's not flat. It doesn't fall right off. Right?
Yeah.
It's still there. It's still on your tongue. It still coats your tongue really
Oh,
nicely.
yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. Like that first, like, proofy tongue coating is, but then it's like I could breathe this one out after. I don't have to, like, hold that one in to not cough or anything. Like, it reads.
You said
130
right away.
Yeah. It reads like a 130. It's not, which I think is a good thing. Like, 140 is. Crazy sometimes. Like a hazmat whiskey sometimes is cool, but sometimes it's like you gotta wait that one out before you cough all over the place. But this is great.
And that's exactly right. And it was coming very high proof, and so I was like, we need to. I can't remember if these barrels were super high. Now that I say that, but I really liked what happened here, and I'm really happy with this whole blend and how it went forward.
Yeah, the mouthfeel is very. Not very, but it's oily. It's like it's very coaty, and when I thought that finish was kind of dying off, it hung in there. Might have even come back up a little bit for just kind of like a dry spice that remained in my mouth. And right on the landing too, I was getting kind of a little bit of drying, a little bit of tannins, to just feel like it was kind of wicking the moisture out of my mouth a little bit in a way that makes you be like, oh damn.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sweetness though. The age is noticeable in a really good way. I mean, it's not that old. 9 to 10 isn't that like, it's like crazy old,
No.
but it is mature. Like you can tell this is like it's got a complexity. It's got a progression of the palate that is sweet and then dry and then sweet again to me.
Yeah, I can see that. So wait, are you saying that I should have let it sit longer?
I would have had to taste these 10-year barrels.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There's no going back now. There's no pulling them out.
But I think that peppery note you're talking about is beautiful here, and I imagine it would have been a little too crazy, or a little too pronounced. Yeah, with the 10-year only. Really nice finish.
Yeah.
If you end up blending with fractional barrels, is there something you do with the remaining fraction that's left in the barrel?
I typically don't do fractional barrels. I mean, if that barrel's good, I'm taking it all.
Yeah.
Because that would become a crazy
That's good.
inventory
Yeah, right.
dilemma, right?
Or you start a Abraham Bowman infinity line or something.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy.
That would be interesting. But
That'd
no,
be an Abraham Bowman.
I picked the right name on that one.
that would be interesting. But no, if I like the barrel, we're taking the whole thing.
That's cool.
And then I'll look for ones that were around that, and around that age statement and around that lot, and I'll take a look and see what those taste like as well. But like even when you go through lots, those barrels are different, right? So because they are so strange, or not strange, is because they do provide so much flavor and they are so unique that you can see, be like, oh, what happened in that barrel? I don't know. Well, let's get this one, that one.
Yeah, and similarly, when you're pulling your 10 years and you say yes, yes, no, yes, yes, no, when the no's go back up and the no's hit 11 and 12 and whatever, are you keeping those in mind for Abrahams? Is there anything else that like, do they get logged away somewhere as like check back in 3 years, or how does that work?
All right, so what do we do if it doesn't? If I don't think it belongs in this blend, right?
And actually, to be clear, the cask strength is your highest age stated product, right?
Correct.
Yeah, in general, for like a regular.
We don't really put ages on anything. I think this is the first one.
Sweet 16.
Yeah, we don't really put much age on.
So there's nothing necessarily that it would get held for a line that exists already. So I guess in the experimental realm, I'm just curious how they kind of end up being used down the road.
Okay, so just because they did not taste what I wanted at cask strength does not mean they're not delicious at 100 proof.
Totally, yeah.
And they could be used for a single barrel John Jay.
Yeah, totally.
Oh,
there we go.
Of course.
Right?
That makes,
So
John Jay has no age statement. So.
That's right. So if I say, this barrel is not going into cask, let's try it at John Jay strength, and then boom. Okay, we'll go for that.
That's
but
cool.
You're right. There are some barrels that do not hit the flavor component, even at John Jay or something else like that.
Yeah.
And so you have to have an idea of what to do with that, right?
Yeah.
You can't just have bad barrels that aren't tasting right sitting there. And you can do a couple things, right? You can blend it out. So you can take multiple barrels that taste great and put that one in there and be like, okay, it's still good, but it's not as noticeable, and you're fine. And so you can blend it out in different blends. You can. What else could you do? You could put it in a different barrel. You could rebarrel it or change it into something else, right?
Oh,
so you're like, okay, so it didn't turn out well here. What if I tried to overpower it with a finish, right? So let's put it in this wine barrel, or let's put it in a cherry flavored something and see if that can do it. And then those would be my two primary routes for those barrels. Would be cut it, make sure, see if it can work as a John Jay. If it can't work as a John Day, then you might want to just blend it throughout. Or is it worth trying to experiment with this juice and turn it into something else?
Yeah.
I mean, how much volume do you have, right? Because when you're hitting these 10 years, you're not talking a lot of volume in that barrel.
Yeah.
So it might not work to just put it in another barrel that's half filled or something like that.
Right. And I know that people can generally reach out to someone at Buffalo Trace and ask questions about specific barrels, and they'll tell them this was dumped, or this was distilled on this date in bottled on this date or barreled on this date and everything. Is that any kind of information that you guys ever offer to the public, where if somebody wrote in an email and to some random person and said, hey, I've got this barrel number for a John J. Bowman single barrel, like information that you'd offer up as far as...
I don't even list barrels on this thing.
Oh, they don't?
Nah.
Is there a laser code?
There might be.
Man, okay. Let me think about how to answer that.
And to be clear, it's not like you're about to get 1,000 emails.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm worried about. I'm very worried about.
Don't email me.
when I show you how to do it, that you're going to look at it and then email, and then I'm going to have to go through. So we are very manually entry, right? So we have a large Excel document that's multiple backups that has all of our barrels and all of our pieces, and then from that, you're right, each one of these bottles is laser coded, and that laser code, I am able to track it all the way back to the barrel it came from.
That's cool.
Is that a process where I can just type a lot code in and it'll tell me what the barrel is? No. It's very multiple spreadsheets, looking through, figuring it out. So it can be done. We can do it. And if you do have a problem with that, 100%, I'll go back and find that barrel and figure out what happened in the process.
Good point.
Those are extremely rare things that happen, but we have to be able to do that. Because not only because I don't want to put out a bad product, and if something happens, I do need to be able to track it back there. If you look at it, yes, you can figure it out. I mean, you won't be able to figure it out, but I can figure out what that barrel is. And it's all based on the L lot code there at the very bottom.
That's right.
But it doesn't say the specific barrel. It says the date, and then it says the bottling lot. And from the bottling lot, then I can track back the barrel that it came from. But then I have to find that bottling lot.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I've always wanted to ask a distiller this. Single barrel product.
Yep.
Let's say you have a 375 milliliters left on the barrel. What do you do with that 375 milliliters?
Do you want the romantic answer or do you want the real answer?
I want the real answer. Tell us the truth. You're like, you can't handle the truth.
People need to know.
Just pour it on the ground.
No, absolutely not. What happens to that? Well, it's a single barrel.
Yep.
Right? So it would go into a blend.
That's cool.
If we have when we go see our bottling line, you'll see that there's a tank set off to the side, and that tank set off to the side is when you do your transitions from one product to the next. And so that tank will then go into a blend. Typically, if it's a John Jay, there's a little bit left over, it'll go into a Bowman Brothers. If there's a little bit Bowman Brothers, because that is a blend, we can typically use that. Sometimes we can put it into barrels, into port barrels, and you can turn into an Isaac. It just depends on what we're processing at the time and what makes most sense for that juice that's sitting there.
Cool.
We will not, blend those barrels or blend barrels together in the bottle.
How long is Isaac finished typically?
3 to 6 months.
Okay.
So it just depends, right? So Isaac is one of the most complicated it's a port barrel finish, right? So we bring barrels in from Portugal.
Nice.
And then we take 4-year-old whiskey and we fill those port barrels, and then we let them sit from 3 to 6 months. And then because port barrels, just like any other barrels, are so variation in flavor, what we do to try to blend that out is we have a large wooden tank called a fooder. We allow it to blend in that fooder prior to being pulled across. So it's in that fooder, it's almost like a Solera. We'll pull half of it out, we'll send it to bottle, put more on top. We'll pull half out over and over.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And we would go through, I'll show you.
I think I've seen that tank thing.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
We'll take a gander.
No. You're doing great stuff.
I know,
David.
yeah. That was fantastic.
You're doing great stuff.
I feel like we didn't talk about cask strength very much, but I mean, it's
fantastic.
It's exactly how good you'd expect it to be.
Yeah.
It's so high proof, full bodied. It's oily. It's got all the cherry notes that you want. It's got.
I would compare it to batch 1 and 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you expect out of a 135 proof high rye
9+ year
bourbon? Yeah, it's great.
Yep,
it's delish.
And it turned out really well. And like I said, I was very, very happy with that Cask 3. But I'm gonna continue to improve. I'm gonna try to continue to improve. Continue to try to master this blending experience and blending process to try to figure out the best way possible to get really great whiskey and bourbon in your hands.
Yeah. Keep up the good work, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll kind of close it out there. If you can get your hands, especially on the A. Smith Bowman Cask Strength, I only say that not because Abraham Bowman's not as good. I only say that because Abraham Bowman's only sold in Virginia, basically. Right. But if you can get your hands on either of these, get your hands on them. And I mean that. They are standout bottles. I would pay easily as much as they're worth on either of them. And as I have on both of them.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, or at least I have on Abraham Bowman. I don't think I've ever technically bought a Smith Bowman.
Yeah. Did you know they sent a media sample of a whole bottle?
Well, yeah, batch one, they sent me a whole bottle. I was like, okay, I won't say anything. Like, don't get it. Exactly. Batch two, they sent me a sample, like a 100 milliliter
and actually,
or something like that.
You know, I know you're trying to close out, but there's one more question I wanted to ask that I thought of earlier. So my first experience with A. Smith Bowman was through Cole.
Yeah,
because
I had so much of it.
Because that media sample headed his way, and he and I had met up, and we were friends, and we started to swap whiskeys back and forth, and he was able to send me 2 ounces of the batch one.
I only recently finished that bottle.
I know, yeah. And so that was a very fun experience for me, and I was curious if you remember, however long ago it may have been, your first experience with A. Smith Bowman. How did they get on your radar, and how did you get interested in them in the first place?
So I was in Sazerac. So I was at the Sazerac house, and because I needed to learn the back end of a this is not the romantic answer, but
okay.
Because I needed to learn a system that we use in Sazerac for inventory control and purchasing and everything like that, I needed to be trained on it.
Totally.
And there's a lady here. Her name's Debbie Stevens. She's one of the most. She's an amazing lady, and she's one of the longest tenured employees here. And so they're like, well, why don't you go up to A. Smith Bowman and train with Debbie? And so I got to come up here.
Cool.
Bryan was kind enough to do pretty much this right here.
That's
he
great.
sat me down, let me try all his products that they make, and then he brought me through the warehouse. He kind of took me under his wing prior to us, knowing that this whole thing would happen. That I would come in and take the reins. But that was my first experience with A. Smith Bowman. Was coming in here and sitting down with Bryan Pruitt, the master distiller, and walking me through and saying, this is what it tastes like, this is what I'm aiming for, and all that kind of stuff.
That's cool.
And you
so
were
it
like,
was really, really an amazing experience.
You were like, I hope to be you someday.
I did. And then I said, now I have to go sit and learn a computer system with Debbie, so I'll see you in 6 hours.
On to the real fun stuff.
That's right. That's right.
I guess my last question is, he doesn't work for Sazerac anymore, apparently. But did you ever meet Mark Brown?
He still works for Sazerac.
He does?
Yeah. He just moved.
He's not the CEO anymore.
He's not CEO.
Yeah.
He's now his title is chairman.
Nice.
But I was on a meeting with him. What day is today? Today's Saturday.
Uh-huh.
I was on a meeting with him on Thursday.
That dude's my homeboy.
He's great.
He's a great man.
Yep.
Good people.
British too.
That's right. And now Jake Wentz.
Bleep that out, everyone. No, kidding. No, we love scotch and all that stuff on the podcast as well.
No, Mark Brown's great. And then now we're under the helm of Jake Wentz, and so he's also doing amazing things and great stuff.
That's great.
Very cool.
Very excited for the future.
Yeah, I have had some contact with Mark, and he's an incredible person. Really nice guy. So that's cool. Well, I guess we'll close it out there. I hope that you get the chance to either try Abraham Bowman, listeners, or A. Smith Bowman Cask Strength. But if not, honestly, Isaac Bowman, which I imagine is it's the cheapest of the standard core line.
Don't say cheap.
No. It's the
the
least
best value.
expensive. Yeah, best value. No, Isaac Bowman is worth picking up.
Yeah.
Bowman Brothers, of course. John Jay, the single barrel. Absolutely. I hope our listeners get an opportunity to get that.
Yeah, and I hope that if you won the lottery, you get down here and pick up your Abraham Bowman
By tomorrow.
By a couple
By the time this comes out, it'll be too late.
You hoping for anything?
I hope that y'all are able to come back. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, try everything, but you got that one in front of me. So,
Yeah.
But no, I really do hope y'all come back. This was a lot of fun.
Hey.
And it's great to sit down with people that appreciate the complexity that goes into trying to do what we're doing here.
Yeah, I hope, David, you keep up the good work and do as you've already done. And you will, great things will happen as they already do. But most of all, listeners, I hope that our love of whiskey lifted your spirits.